There's a quiet strength in people who don't overshare. We live in a world that encourages us to post everything, our successes, our struggles, our relationships, our plans. The pressure to broadcast our lives is so loud. That silence has become a rare form of wisdom. But intelligent people, truly self-aware, emotionally mature individuals know better. They understand that privacy is not about secrecy. It's about protecting what matters most. There are three things above all that the wise keep private at any cost. Not because they're hiding something, but because they understand the value of boundaries. The first thing an intelligent person keeps private is their long-term goals. Why? Because premature exposure kills potential. When you share your goals too early, you invite unnecessary opinions, unsolicited advice, and often subtle doubt from others. The mind, when praised too soon, loses urgency. Intelligent individuals protect their dreams from that noise. They allow their ambition to be watered by effort, not applause. They understand that a goal exposed too early is like a seed planted in shallow soil. It never grows deep enough to survive the storm. Second, they keep their personal struggles private. This is not about pretending to be strong. It's about healing and peace. When pain is made public too early, it becomes content instead of growth. Intelligent people choose carefully who to be vulnerable with. Not everyone deserves access to your pain. They do share, but with intention, not for attention. They know that the loudest cries are often masked with silence and that true healing is internal, not always visible. Privacy gives struggle a chance to turn into strength before the world puts a label on it. And third, an intelligent person keeps their family matters and relationships private. We've all seen it. People using their relationships as a highlight reel, trying to prove happiness through a lens. But wise people understand that real connection doesn't need validation from the crowd. They protect the sacredness of their bonds, whether with a spouse, a parent, or a child, because they know that public scrutiny can erode even the strongest ties. Privacy in relationships isn't about hiding love, it's about honoring it. Because the more sacred something is, the less it should be exposed. Now here's the thing, it takes discipline to keep things private in an age of visibility. It takes confidence to hold things close when the world is screaming for disclosure. But intelligence isn't just about what you know. It's about what you choose not to say. The strongest individuals don't post their every move. They don't speak before they think. And they don't let validation replace intention. Because at the end of the day, maturity is knowing what to share and what to protect. Fifth keynotes of the speech. Premature exposure of goals invites resistance and weakens drive. Healing happens best in private without external judgment or noise. Personal relationships thrive when protected from public opinion. Privacy is a form of emotional intelligence and maturity. Silence, when chosen wisely, becomes a powerful act of strength. ChatGPT said premature exposure of goals invites resistance and weakens drive. This truth is often overlooked in a culture obsessed with declarations. We're told to speak it into existence, to manifest publicly, to post our ambitions so the world can watch us chase them. But what if that public display is actually what holds us back? What if the very act of sharing too soon dilutes the energy we need to stay focused? When we announce our goals before they are fully formed, we unintentionally shift the energy from internal commitment to external validation. The brain, interestingly, cannot always distinguish between real achievement and the praise we receive simply by talking about our plans. When we get applauded for merely stating our ambitions, we feel good. That dopamine rush can trick us into believing we've already done something. The problem is, we haven't. The work hasn't started. The habits haven't changed. But our motivation has already been rewarded, which can lead to complacency. Intelligent people understand that not all motivation is created equal. They recognize the difference between the motivation that comes from within and the kind that's borrowed from likes, comments, and claps. They know that when you expose your goals too early, you open the door for doubt, criticism, comparison, and sometimes even sabotage. Not everyone clapping for you wants you to succeed. Some people cheer just loud enough to hear how close they are to stopping you. It's not about paranoia, it's about awareness. Protecting your goals means shielding them from influence until they're strong enough to withstand scrutiny. Another risk of early exposure is the psychological shift that occurs when goals move from being yours to becoming part of the public record. Suddenly, your ambition belongs not only to you, but to everyone who heard about it. That creates pressure, not the kind that inspires, but the kind that distorts. Now, you're not just working towards something for yourself, you're performing progress for an audience. This can lead you to make decisions based on optics rather than purpose. Instead of focusing on the next right step, you might be tempted to skip steps just to prove you're moving. This is how goals lose their soul. The journey becomes performative, not transformative. Privacy preserves authenticity. When you keep your goals to yourself, especially in the early stages, you allow them to evolve organically. You have room to adjust, to pivot, to fail and restart without the weight of expectation. That space is vital. It's where real growth happens. Not every idea is ready for the world. Some need time in silence, nurtured by patience and discipline. Intelligent people understand this. They see the value in letting the work speak first, and the results echo after. There is also a confidence that comes from silent ambition. When you know where you're going but don't feel the need to declare it, you conserve energy. You stay focused. You aren't constantly reacting to feedback or seeking confirmation. You build from a place of clarity, not noise. Quiet confidence isn't about arrogance. It's about being rooted in your path, whether anyone's watching or not. Intelligent individuals understand that confidence isn't built in conversations. It's built in commitment. Of course, this doesn't mean goals should never be shared. Sharing can be powerful when done intentionally, with the right people at the right time. But doing it just to be seen or out of excitement can cost you more than you realize. It's the difference between lighting a fire in the wind versus sheltering it until it's strong enough to withstand storms. If you speak too soon, the flame can die out before it even spreads warmth. The truth is, there's something sacred about working in silence. It's where you find out who you are, how bad you want it, and what you're made of. The intelligent person guards that space. They don't need applause at the starting line because they know the finish line is what matters. And they understand that discipline is easier to sustain when it's fueled by purpose, not performance. Goals are not promises to the world. They are commitments to the self. That distinction is everything. Healing happens best in private without external judgment or noise. In a world that encourages us to share every aspect of our lives, there's an increasing temptation to process our pain in public. Social media has created a space where vulnerability is often mistaken for visibility. People are applauded for speaking their truth, and while there is value in openness, there is also a cost to healing in the spotlight. Intelligent individuals understand that growth, especially from struggle, requires a kind of stillness that the public eye rarely provides. When we're hurt, confused, or navigating loss, our emotional state is raw. That rawness is fragile. It hasn't yet been shaped into meaning. It's like a wound that hasn't begun to scab over. If exposed too soon, it can easily become infected by the opinions, projections, and biases of others. Healing is a personal journey, one that demands introspection, time, and trust in oneself. When that process is interrupted by outside commentary, we risk building our recovery around what others think instead of what we truly need. There's also a subtle pressure that comes with sharing struggles too early. The moment you speak about your pain publicly, you create an expectation, an image of how strong you're being, how well you're coping, how quickly you'll bounce back. And then, rather than focusing on the internal work of healing, you begin performing resilience. You start editing your emotions for your audience. The grieving becomes less about understanding what happened and more about maintaining a narrative. Intelligent people recognize that this is a trap. They know that true healing doesn't need applause. It needs honesty, solitude, and space. Furthermore, not everyone who listens to your struggle is equipped to help you carry it. Sometimes people respond with advice that isn't helpful or with comparisons that minimize your experience. Worse, some respond with quiet judgment, using your vulnerability as ammunition for gossip or subtle ridicule. This doesn't make them evil, it just makes them human. But intelligent people don't take that risk lightly. They know that not every ear is safe and not every conversation is sacred. So they choose carefully who they allow into their emotional space. Healing in private also gives you the freedom to be messy without explanation. You can cry, fall apart, question everything, and rebuild at your own pace without having to justify any of it. You're not managing perceptions, you're managing your heart. And in that sacred silence, something powerful happens. You begin to understand yourself better. You become the observer of your own emotions rather than the performer of them. You learn to listen to the quiet signals your mind and body send you. And that kind of awareness leads to deeper transformation than any audience could ever give. There's also a form of protection in privacy. When you're healing, you're in a state of vulnerability where you're more likely to absorb what others say. Their energy, their opinions, their emotional tones, they can shape your perspective before you even realize it. And if you're constantly exposed to other people's interpretations of your pain, you might begin to adopt their story instead of your own. Intelligent individuals guard against this. They stay close to their own voice, especially when it's shaky, because they understand that true clarity comes from within, not from consensus. It's also important to note that healing doesn't always look impressive. It's not always a motivational quote, a tidy narrative, or a breakthrough moment. Sometimes healing is just showing up every day and doing your best to keep going. Sometimes it's boring, repetitive, or slow. When we heal privately, we remove the pressure to make it look like anything other than what it is. That honesty is what allows the process to unfold naturally. Intelligent people accept the unglamorous parts of recovery. They embrace the silence, the discomfort, and the uncertainty because they know that real change isn't always visible. It's internal, gradual, and deeply personal. Privacy during pain doesn't mean isolation. It means choosing intentional connection. Instead of sharing with everyone, intelligent people share with a trusted few, those who have earned the right to hear their story. These are people who listen without fixing, who support without judging, and who respect the process without rushing it. Healing isn't about hiding, it's about honoring. And honoring your journey means giving it the respect and care it deserves, even when no one else is watching. In the end, the wisest people aren't the ones who broadcast their battles, but the ones who win them in silence. Not because they're ashamed of their pain, but because they understand its sacredness. They know that in the quiet spaces where no one else is watching, they're not just recovering, they're becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more whole than they ever were before. Silence, when chosen wisely, becomes a powerful act of strength. In many ways, we've been taught to equate silence with weakness, something passive, timid, or uncertain. But for emotionally intelligent and self-aware individuals, silence is anything but weak. It's a deliberate choice rooted in discipline, perspective, and self-control. There's immense power in not reacting to everything, in not needing to voice every opinion, in not having to prove a point. Silence can be the highest form of confidence because it signals that you're grounded enough in your identity to let your actions speak louder than your words. In a society that rewards quick reactions and constant expression, choosing silence takes maturity. The moment someone challenges us, criticizes us, or misunderstands us, our instinct is often to respond, to defend, explain, or retaliate. But intelligent individuals understand that not every opinion requires a response. Not every provocation deserves attention. The emotionally mature have learned that silence, when used intentionally, protects peace. It creates distance between reaction and decision, allowing space for clarity. Instead of being dragged into emotional chaos, silence gives you the upper hand by refusing to participate in noise. Silence also preserves dignity. There are moments when speaking up may only escalate conflict, damage relationships, or expose vulnerabilities that others might not respect. Choosing silence in those moments isn't cowardice, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that some battles are not worth fighting and some words are better left unsaid, not because they aren't true, but because their impact would be wasted or misused. The intelligent person doesn't always stay silent, but they know when silence communicates more than words ever could. There's also power in being silent about your progress. Not every achievement needs to be announced. Not every goal needs to be broadcast. When you're truly focused, you don't have time to keep updating the world on your journey. You're too busy working, and that kind of silent effort builds resilience. It trains your mind to stay centered on the work rather than the recognition. People who achieve great things often do so quietly. They understand that growth is most effective when it's not interrupted by the need for applause. Silence is also a form of emotional regulation. When you choose silence, you create a moment to pause, to breathe, and to understand your own feelings before expressing them. In high-stress situations, emotionally intelligent individuals don't rush to speak. They wait, they listen, and they observe. They realize that reacting too quickly often leads to regret. That one careless word said in anger can undo years of trust. Silence is not just about what you withhold from others. It's about the grace you offer yourself in not rushing to meet external pressures. There is also a quiet strength in being misunderstood and not feeling the need to explain yourself. Intelligent individuals are not controlled by the opinions of others. They know that not everyone will understand their path, their decisions, or their values, and that's okay. Silence becomes a shield. It allows them to walk their own road without being swayed by every judgment they face along the way. When you're no longer obsessed with being understood, you gain freedom. You realize that your energy is better spent on becoming than on convincing. Silence gives space for deep listening. The most intelligent people are often the best listeners, not because they lack something to say, but because they understand the value of hearing others fully. In conversations, they don't interrupt to inject their thoughts or force their ideas. They let others finish. They create space for understanding. And when they finally speak, their words carry more weight, not because they're louder, but because they're measured, thoughtful, and timely. That's the true strength of silence. It amplifies the power of your voice when you choose to use it. There is also peace in silence. When you're not constantly speaking, debating, or defending, you conserve energy. You protect your focus. You don't allow your mind to be pulled into unnecessary noise. Silence becomes a sanctuary, a space where you can think clearly, reflect deeply, and act intentionally. Intelligent individuals value the sanctuary. They don't fear being alone with their thoughts. In fact, they seek it, knowing that most clarity is found not in conversation, but in contemplation. To choose silence in a world that thrives on noise is not easy. It requires strength to stay grounded while others chase attention. It requires confidence to trust your own understanding without needing external confirmation. But those who master silence, who use it not as avoidance but as awareness, find a rare kind of strength, one that can't be shaken by chaos, nor inflated by praise. They understand that silence is not the absence of voice, but the presence of power waiting to be used with purpose. The intelligent person understands that privacy is not a barrier, but a boundary, a thoughtful, intentional way to protect peace, purpose, and progress. In a world that constantly demands visibility, they choose discretion. They know that keeping their goals private preserves their focus, that healing in silence strengthens resilience, that protecting personal relationships nurtures authenticity, that privacy itself reflects emotional depth, and that silence, when chosen wisely, becomes a force of unshakable strength. They do not guard these things out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because what is sacred is not what is most seen, it is what is most valued. And to live intelligently is to know that some of life's most powerful things are the ones we keep to ourselves.